Hi, I'm Colleen, and here are some of my favorite books of the year. Now, I broke these down by genre, and this is kind of like the book club book genres, I guess. This is historical fiction, literary fiction, and contemporary fiction. And they could all sort of fall into literary fiction, which is why I piled this group together. If you were looking for my other genre videos, I will link them in the description. I have a video on all my favorite romances of the year, and then another video on all my favorite fantasy and mystery of the year. So let's start off with historical fiction, and my favorite historical fiction of the year was The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. Now, this is kind of a strange historical fiction because it's also a little bit of like a psychological thriller. We follow Lib, who is an English nurse who is now in the Irish Midlands, and she has been commissioned to come basically find out whether or not a miracle is taking place. So there's this young child, and she's probably around 11 years old, who has been refusing to eat for months but isn't dying. So Lib, along with a nun, have been asked to come and watch her constantly. And they have like 8 hours on, 8 hours off each. They literally sit in this child's bedroom and watch her and make sure that her parents aren't sneaking her food, make sure she isn't sneaking food in her room. Lib does this big search of her bedroom to make sure she doesn't have anything hidden in her pillowcase so that when she's sleeping, she could be eating, stuff like that. Because Lib and this nun are doing 8 hours on, 8 hours off, they're never really getting good sleeps when they're off. So Lib's mind starts to play tricks on her. I really liked this book. It's very hard to put down once you start reading it. It's extremely engrossing. We do really get into Lib's head about like what her faith is. What does she believe in? Does she believe that this child is a miracle? Does she believe that her parents are somehow sneaking her food? It's a wonderful read. It's also a good look at Ireland in the time period. I don't know if there's an actual year, but I know they say that we're about 15 years after the end of the potato famine, and Lib really doesn't understand how that affected Ireland, which I liked that portion of the book as well. She strikes a friendship with a reporter who's also covering the story, and they both have great conversations about like how the English treated the Irish at that time period and what it was like to live through the potato famine. The Wonder by Emma Donoghue. If you want to read a historical thriller, definitely read this. Also a great book club book because there's a lot to discuss. Next, I have a little bit more of like a by the book literary fiction, and that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Everybody loves this book. Every September and October, it's on everyone's TBRs and everybody's you should read this. And so I finally read it this year, and I did really enjoy it. I will say that if you majored in English literature or theater in university, you would probably super love this book because it definitely gave me like a lot of flashbacks to all the Shakespeare I had to read when I was in university. Our narrator is Oliver, and the book opens like in the future. Oliver's getting out of prison, and the police officer who put him there is retired now and says, "Will you tell me what actually happened now?" And then we get the story of Oliver's time at this prestigious performing arts school, of what actually happened during with his group of friends while they were performing Shakespeare their senior year. It's wonderful. Talk about an atmospheric book. You feel like you were at this school. You feel like you're in this other world. They're just so immersed in Shakespeare. It's not a stretch at all that these kids might have some issues because they literally live their lives as characters pretty much 24 hours a day. It's a bit of a slow read. This isn't something you're going to pick up and just fly through. Maybe you will, but I didn't. But the build is fantastic. You definitely really feel like you are in this world. The next lit fic book I picked was A History of Wild Places by Shea Ernshaw. This is also like book of the month billed as magical realism, but to me when I was reading it, it really felt like literary fiction and definitely felt like a good book club book pick. This book opens and we are following the narrator Travis, and he is a psychic who can find missing people, and he has been commissioned by the parents of Maggie St. James, who is a missing children's book author, to try to find her. So he goes to where her car was abandoned, which is in the Pacific Northwest. At the time period right now is winter. She did disappear in the summer several years earlier. And when he gets to where her car was, he picks up her psychic trail and starts following it through the woods. He starts seeing these weird symbols on trees and begins to follow them. And then we just stop following Travis and we get 3 new narrators. And you're not sure exactly when you are, if you're before Travis or after Travis, but your narrators are Theo, Calla, and B. Theo and Calla are married, and Calla and Bea are sisters, and they all live in a house together in this very weird community, which feels sort of like one of those like 1960s communes, but gone a little bit wrong. The people there are all afraid to leave because they believe that there is a sickness in the woods that's killing the trees, and that if they cross the border, they will get sick and die. And there are many stories over the past years of people crossing the borders, bringing this sickness back, and like rotting from the inside out. It's a very creepy story. There's an amazing twist in it that I did not see coming at all, that I really liked. And there's a lot to talk about. It's a really cool story about, like, I don't want to give anything away, about like the way our brains work and the people we love. I enjoyed it a lot. Give it a try. History of Wild Places by Shea Ernshaw. And my last pick of like a book clubby type book for the year, and my favorite in this wider genre, was Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaghy. And this is billed as a contemporary fiction, but could definitely be used as a literary fiction as well. In this book, we are following Inti and her twin sister Aggie. And when the book opens, Inti she's some sort of like wildlife biologist, and she is working to reintroduce wolves into the Scottish Highlands, and meeting quite a bit of resistance from the locals, who are mostly farmers and don't want wolves attacking their livestock. Inti's identical twin sister Aggie lives sort of as a recluse with her. She does not leave, and no one knows her no one really knows she's there. She's a secret. There is sort of this like something hanging over them. When they had lived in Alaska previously, something had happened, something bad. And you don't find out until you've read quite a bit of the book, but something bad had happened, and they're a little bit in hiding, trying to escape what happened in Alaska. We also get a lot of flashbacks to their childhood, where they spent half the year with their mother, who was a police officer living in Australia, and half the year with their father, who was basically like a wilderness survival expert living in the woods. And I believe we're in like British Columbia in Canada. You're in like pretty dense woods. This book has quite a few trigger warnings, which should not be taken lightly. There is quite a bit of animal abuse. There is sexual abuse. There is physical abuse. There's a lot of gory stuff happens. If you are someone who can't handle those trigger warnings, just proceed with caution. I didn't read the trigger warnings, and I probably wouldn't have gotten the book if I had, because those are usually things I can't handle, but I am glad that I didn't read them because I really loved this book. I thought it was fantastic. It's also a really short read. It's, I think, about like 250 pages. So you can get it read. Yeah, it's 256. You can get it read, in 2 days and just really immerse yourself. This is another book that takes place in the winter. And if you are looking for a wintry read right now, this is a great wintry read. And those are all my literary fiction type book club book recommendations for 2021, my best of. So I didn't read that much in any of those genres. I think I read 3 historical fictions. I think I only read 2 or 3 literary fictions, and Once There Were was technically, I read 2 contemporary fictions. So these aren't genres that I do the majority of my reading in, but I really enjoyed all of these, and I'm hoping to read more in those genres next year. If you have some similar books that you would want to recommend to me, please throw them in the comments. Or if you also loved one of these books, let me know. I know everyone loves If We Were Villains, but I haven't met very many people who read Once There Were Wolves, and I loved it so much. I would love to talk about it with anyone. I hope you are in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. See you soon.